Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of GIANT's Healthy Innovators TV. My name is Barry Shrier, and I'm your host. I'd like to welcome all of our visitors and listeners from around the world. We are an international community of nearly 300,000 people around the world, and our strapline is that we serve everybody whose business is healthcare, technology, and innovation. So thank you once again to all of our listeners and all of our viewers from around the world. If you like these videos, please remember to like them on YouTube and to subscribe. That would help us to help you. So the name of the business which is running these events and this show is GIANT Health. Please, we invite everyone to go to our website, www.giant.health, and check out all of our community there. We have a big annual event which is coming up next week in London, England. It's the GIANT Health event. According to the Financial Times newspaper, it's Europe's largest, most valuable annual healthcare tech festival. So that's Tuesday, the 6th of December, Wednesday, the 7th of December in London, England. Hope we can meet you there. So what do we do with the Healthy Innovators TV? Every week we bring you leaders, technology leaders and innovators who are at the front of innovation in healthcare. So this week, we're very proud to bring you our sponsor and the head of the company Content Guru, Martin Taylor. So hello, Martin. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Really appreciate you giving the time. So we're quite excited to hear a little bit about you and your business. Before that, we just want to thank our other sponsors, Vodafone Business and our knowledge partner, McKinsey. So along with Content Guru as a lead sponsor of the GIANT Health event, we love working with all of our sponsors and we're very grateful for your support. So Martin, love to hear a little bit about you personally. How did you get to Content Guru? And tell us please a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I started out with an unhealthy interest in computers, I guess. Started out writing games when I was about 10.
Wow.
And then, so I suppose some kind of tech career was going to be inevitable once I'd finished university. And actually, I co-founded this business back in the 90s when I was only 22 years old.
Wow.
With my brother and a few friends from university. And so we were always about communication technology, but what that has meant and how we've applied it, that's changed massively over the years, as of course has the whole scale of the business.
Sure. And so did you go straight into that right out of university? Had you worked for any other tech companies earlier on?
Yeah, I've only had one other job. So I worked for a company in the Far East for a few months. But really, I was kind of planning this all along.
Yes. Well, that's extremely interesting. So to be honest, obviously, well, A, congratulations. What an amazing and impressive stretch in your career. But B, we do see this a lot with entrepreneurs, and that is, starting very early. What was it? What was the scratch that you were ambitious to serve?
Yeah, well, at the time in the 90s, you had a couple of factors coming together. One was the rise of the digital signal processor, which seems quite kind of old hat now. But the idea that you could get a DSP or a number of them onto a blade, plug it into a personal computer, and then you could attach that to a newly deregulated telephone network. That suddenly opened up a whole range of new possibilities of kind of computerizing communications.
Wow.
And it's really, that's what sucked me in, because I thought, okay, there's no one doing this yet. It really was ground floor in a completely new industry.
Nice. Oh, that's fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing that. We do love to hear the origin stories, and I think a lot of our listeners find this quite motivating and insightful. So thank you for sharing it. Let's talk about Content Guru. If you can help us to understand how you guys started the business. Did you have to raise money? Were you bootstrapping? Were you living in the basement of your parents' house until you got revenues off the ground? And then what's the journey of Content Guru from then till now?
Yeah, well, we started the business as Redwood Technologies, and Content Guru even today is part of a Redwood Technologies group. And we began by making small systems and then bigger ones. We did all the TV voting for a lot of the reality TV shows that are on now.
Wow.
Yeah, like Big Brother and X Factor were,
right.
Pop Idol. Those were kind of formative for us.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So having kind of built these big systems, we then kind of started to think about what more could we do. So we thought, actually, what would be even better would be to actually run some of these services ourselves. And if we could build an even larger platform and we could effectively partition that so that many organizations could share it rather than just one per system, that we could have a kind of new style of business, and that was Content Guru.
Nice. Nice, excellent. And so obviously we are about healthcare and technology innovation to address big challenges and opportunities in healthcare. So tell us a little bit about Content Guru and your work in the health sector.
Yeah, sure. So it's primarily with the NHS, although we do work with health systems in other countries. In fact, I was at our Netherlands company, Content Guru BV, just 2 weeks ago now,
Right.
with our partner Vodafone, funnily enough, there. And we're doing some planning around Dutch health system requirements, and kind of we're looking at what can we kind of transplant over from the NHS ideas, and what's new, what's different, what's the same. So the fundamental requirements of health are similar the world over, but it's really the structures of how health systems work in different
Yes.
countries are what's different. So looking at the UK, I mean, NHS, we first got involved with going back about 8 years now, going probably early 2014, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite a few years ago now,
Yes.
but in other ways, it's passed quickly. So looking across what we do, we're best known as being part of the integrated urgent and emergency care arena. We also do ambulance services. So little known fact is that every 999 ambulance call in the UK goes through our platform that we call Storm.
Nice. What does that mean? If you don't mind elaborating, because a
Yeah.
lot of our listeners might not understand that. So every 99 call does what?
So you dial 999, you get through to a BT operator, and depending where you are, you'll go to the appropriate ambulance service for where you are in the country. So there are 10 ambulance services in England, one each for Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So prior to us coming along, it would be really a matter of whether that ambulance service could answer your call, or whether they couldn't, or whether you're going to have to wait.
Okay.
Was some kind of primitive bilateral buddying one to another. But again, that would take no account of whether the other service was also under pressure. So what we've introduced is what's called the intelligent routing platform. So it's using our big cloud platform, Storm, as a kind of cloud brand, and it's looking to see across all of the 13 ambulance trusts, being the 10 plus the 3, yes, we want to answer the call locally to where this person is, but if not, let's answer it with who can take it most quickly.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's really the intelligence part of it. Where is the next available agent, but nationally, not just within that particular ambulance trust.
And that's the Storm platform.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So Storm is what we run all of our services on. Now, we have a kind of sub-unit of Storm called the Emergency Services Platform for doing this most critical stuff.
Right.
Yeah, most of the health system is on the general Storm platform.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So if you think of specialized services like blood and transplant, that runs nationally on Storm. In different locales, you've got patient transport, or things like dialysis for dialysis machines. All of the kind of contact handling around those, that's done on the same platform.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, hospitals, of course. So can't forget hospitals.
Yes.
So, we've been working with hospitals like Belfast Trust or George Eliot or Yeovil, optimizing those hospital communications. A lot of the time, because we're up in the cloud, it's about going beyond voice calls to like video, to chat, social channels, email.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, we'd be very keen to learn more about that in this conversation.
Yeah.
So the Storm platform sounds extraordinary and obviously quite powerful and invaluable. We've heard that you guys have a long-standing partnership with Hearts Urgent Care.
Yeah.
How did that come about? How did that start? And then, so 2 questions. How did that start? And then what are examples of the things you guys are doing with them?
Oh, well, that sort of kind of whole big area in itself. We first met Huck in 2014, so very early days for us in healthcare. And we were doing what were called phase 2 pilots for NHS 111. And so there were some little pots of money made available to do specific areas of research that would take the 111 urgent care service forward. And Huck were involved in 2 of those. and that's how we got to meet them. So we were providing the tech layer, and they were providing the clinicians and the service wrap.
Okay.
So, yeah, one was around mental health, and the other one was around primary care. So the first one, it was mental health, connecting from 111 to specialized mental health providers. And actually, we've gone on to work with quite a number of those subsequently.
Right.
So doing the crisis lines and that kind of thing, including Hearts Partnership Foundation Trust, the local one to Huck, but also places like Sussex and around London. So that was one. And the other one was using 111's capacity to help with primary care. So if you imagine when we call a GP practice, you're going right to that end point, and then the phone is being answered there. So the thought was, why not deal with that higher up, kind of in the cloud in a bigger center,
Yes.
for more of a region?
Yeah, that seems quite efficient, obviously, and it doesn't seem logical, does it, to have the individual GP receptionist and 5,500 GP practices across the country answering the phone all the time?
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit like the logic of ambulances, but thousands of them instead of 13 of them. Why go to the end in order to go to set the front door up? So we really liked Huck, and we worked well together. In fact, one of those pilots was the first one to go live nationally. So they kind of won that race. And so after that, the pilots came to an end, as all good things do. But we remained in touch. And a few months later, the chief executive of Huck asked if we could provide our contact center to run his main 111 service for Hertfordshire and West Essex, which we were kind of bringing together at the time. So we were able to do that. And then we added Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, it was a separate contract that they'd won, and then Luton and Bedfordshire. Now we're adding in further groups that they've taken over in the south and southwest of England.
Excellent.
It really has kind of grown organically over that period of time.
Yeah, that's magnificent. And the success of that and the growth obviously is impressive and positive testimony to the quality of what you guys are doing. So great to hear about that. Could you help us to understand development partnerships themselves are kind of rare in the NHS. So could you help us to understand, like, what are examples that have made you guys so strong in that partnership? What's your approach been?
Yeah, it's been about finding the right people with the right mindset who want to collaborate and do new things. And that's really where Huck have been really a standout organization for us. So obviously we've done really effective research and groundbreaking work elsewhere. I'd cite Healthy London Partnership as another great partner. We've achieved so much with them over 7 years or so now.
Who's that again? The second one?
Healthy London Partnership. So they are effectively a coordinating body for the big 5 footprints, ICS footprints of London, with 32 CCGs that underpin that. And because they're covering that wide area, and it's the capital, and there's so many people live there, they've really thought about how to join together informations, services, different databases, health systems, different parts of the health infrastructure.
Nice.
And, we've had a really fruitful partnership overlaying that and introducing agile methodologies to do more than 200 sprints across those periods of years.
Right.
But going back to Huck, I mean, Huck, we just had a really willing partner. And the other aspect that they're really good at is having their kind of ear to the ground for what sort of new things could get backing from the centre, or where is a friendly commissioner who might potentially want to experiment and introduce a new service. And so that's really the partnership aspect. So they're able to bring us, for example, hospitals or mental health trusts or other parts of that health infrastructure and bring those together so that we can do the kind of things that we've been able to do. So there are so many examples. We don't just do the 111 service and the clinical assessment service or CAS or the out of hours service. We've gone on to do things like self-triage. So that was a great pilot that we did in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough a few years ago now. While you're waiting on hold, why don't you work through a kind of self-triage on your phone screen.
Yes.
And then by the time you get through, we've probably got a good idea of what's wrong with you. And let's put that straight through to the clinician who answers the phone and save everyone a lot of time.
Yes.
And get straight to the more valuable part of the conversation.
Yes. Is that the 111 service, or is this 999?
Yeah, that's for 111.
Okay.
So
Yep.
really, Huck is all been about 111. So a few more examples would be one we're working on now using web chat, another one using natural language processing. We've done a few things with NLP, the form of AI. So to identify who someone is, open a new case in the clinical record system at Astra, start populating that case, present the case to the person who's taking that call. So we've done, again, a lot of that groundwork. Who are you? And basically, what do you want? Thus taking out a big chunk of time at the start of the call. We've been looking at what can we do at the end of the call to make that more effective. So we know that lots of patients forget the health advice that they're given because they're not feeling well.
Well, exactly.
A lot of
It takes
information
people out of their comfort zone, doesn't it?
So what happens is that health information or health advice is produced kind of automatically as part of a post-event message by the record system that is used in 111. So before the call ends, we're able to receive that information. We take out the parts that are relevant to the patient care, where you've got to go, who you've got to see, what you've got to take, mash all that down, put it onto an individual web page. Then we send a text message with a link to that web page so that the person can access their own care advice. And the important thing there is that we should be able to save the health advisor needing to read out the advice. You merely have to confirm you've got the text, you can click through and service yourself. So again, saving a load of time there. And that's addressing the fundamental challenge that you can never have quite enough health advisors and quite enough clinical advisors to meet the rising demand. So automation, when done well, really supports those health advisors and clinicians in their work.
Yes, absolutely. Martin, thank you for sharing that. These are really valuable practical applications, aren't they? And this is by no means whatsoever technology looking for a solution, so to speak. So it's great to hear. How does the innovation happen? Are you guys yourself, for example, pitching opportunities or new ideas or innovations to your partners, or are you simply listening to them and walking around the hospital with them and observing where help is needed?
Yeah, it's much more the latter. So we've got it kind of ingrained as a process. It's problem, solution, product. So the problem may lead to a product, but we'd never start off talking about products.
Okay.
We go in and observe. And actually, quite a lot of the information is captured by our customer success team. They go on site, they do a sort of day in the life of, see how people work, make observations. And they're not technologists even. These are people from the kind of customer contact world. And they know how things work best. And they'll see if there's a kind of gap between what you are doing and what you could be doing. And also they listen to people on the front line and what they would like, what would improve how they work. And then they kind of bring that back. And then we'll tend to say, okay, look, we've had a few ideas. Let's have a bit of an ideation workshop. And very often we do that here in Bracknell in our headquarters. We've got a couple of what we call customer experience centres, which can hold up to 50 odd people. So we can get big groups in of health professionals, often from different departments, from different organizations.
Right.
And we'll work through a few challenges and kind of produce some solution outlines that we've sparked a lot of innovation right here in this building using those sort of methods.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's excellent, because often one hears criticism of technology, like I said, which is looking for a solution or which isn't quite optimized from the end user and patient perspective. So it's important and I suppose an obvious testimony to your success about how, if you will, customer problem-led your product development is.
Yeah, and we always say that our whole product development is 80% customer inspired.
Hmm.
Got a research and development program. They're working up to 4 years ahead for underlying technologies. But
Hmm.
really, in terms of what the products should do, that's primarily led by what the market wants.
Yes, absolutely. Well, look, this conversation and our listeners, both here in the UK and around the world, are not necessarily coders or engineers. However, we would love to hear a little bit more about the technology and plans you have for the Storm platform. And you mentioned before Storm Link. So, if you could tell us a little bit about that and the story of Storm Link and so forth,
Yeah.
but not from too technical of a perspective, if you don't mind.
Sure. So the Storm platform can do all sorts of things, really. It's
Okay.
the communication element. It's got its own onboard CRM, what we call CKS. It's got workforce management. So lots of kind of components that make up a contact type of environment. And you mentioned Link. One of the things that we demoed some years ago was video. We thought, wouldn't it be great if you're in a phone call and you go to video and then you can see each other? And that stood as a demo in our experience center for about 5 or 6 years. Everyone liked it, but there wasn't an obvious commercial or clinical need for it. And then the pandemic came, of course, and suddenly you had clinicians not wanting to catch COVID,
Exactly.
patients not wanting to catch COVID off each other. So
Sure.
everything became remote, and over the phone wasn't quite cutting it in every circumstance.
Hmm.
So we essentially took what we'd done for this demo and we rapidly productized it in about a 3-week period of intense work.
Oh.
And again, working with Huck, because their clinicians wanted to do these remote consultations. They identified what was wrong with kind of other ways of doing these remote consultations, that you needed an app, that you needed to make an appointment, that there was stuff to install. So we really kind of wound back to the basics. Let's have a normal call, the clinicians deciding, okay, this person would benefit from video at this point. An SMS message is sent because 70 odd plus% now are contacting via mobile. You simply click on that link, it asks you on the screen permission to open your screen and camera, and then off you go. So we implemented that. Initially, they wanted it one way because the clinicians were a bit camera shy. They didn't want to be seen. But later they said, actually, it would be better if it was two-way. People like to see their doctor.
Yes. Yeah.
So we made it two-way. We then put the background blurring in. We then added the ability to use one or other camera on the phone because they tend to have forward and back facing cameras. We added a stills capability, so you can just take a photo of the rash, for example, so it can be sent up.
Yeah.
So it's really evolved over time, and it's just been really happy and successful. And that's become then a mainstream product that we're rolling out, for example, in our police business as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is that something that was like you said, available but really driven by the pandemic?
Yes, exactly. So quite often we'll have an idea and we'll put together a kind of part built product to show people and kick around and see if it goes anywhere. And sometimes it does. Usually it does. Sometimes it doesn't. But in the latter case, generally its time will come. So we've been doing other things around an idea of digitalizing care homes, for example. And again, we've put together our idea of how that could look for the caregiver, for the multidisciplinary team.
Yes.
And people are just starting to latch onto that now a couple of years later.
Yes.
We're prepared to kind of venture with doing some amount of development on a basic idea we think is good.
Mm-hmm.
But really where the partnership comes in with a Huck or similar is in taking that, making it really into a hardened product that's really going to work in a specific environment.
Yes.
And then getting it adopted.
Yes. Yes, exactly. You mentioned the key word, getting it adopted, or the key phrase.
Yeah.
What's that famous Middle English comment? Many a drip spilled between cup and lip.
Yes.
And so you can have brilliant product that absolutely satisfies uncontroversial need and delivers cost-effective benefit, but getting it adopted is the next step, isn't it? So, what's your experience in that area? And do you experience pushback? Do people say, "Well, I've been a doctor for 30 years. Why do I need all of this newfangled shiny equipment?"
Yeah, I mean, there are always some who are more kind of willing than others. So we always talk about a coalition of the willing. So whenever we're looking at something new, I
Yeah,
think of that bell-shaped curve.
yeah,
You're trying to work with people nearer the front of the curve. They're keener.
yes,
The main bell bit will join in once it's proven and the risk is clearly not there. And then
yes,
there'll be a tail, and they'll be dragged along, kicking and screaming. Eventually, when there's no longer any choice,
yes,
we don't really engage with the latter bit. We tend to work with those who want to lead.
yeah,
And in any field, you're going to get a few people who want to do things first and don't mind taking the odd risk because they tend to back their judgment. And again, that's where kind of Huck have come in. Going to the cloud was quite controversial for them. Running 111 in the cloud, it wasn't really being
okay,
done. And yeah, so they did it. And so when the pandemic came, they were the first provider of 111 services to be allowed to have people working from home
right.
as call handlers, as health advisors.
What were the issues from, you said from the cloud? Are these security issues? Are these, we don't want all of our data on some server in South Korea, or what?
Yes. So security is always kind of where people open an argument in cloud. And obviously in the early days of cloud, it was more controversial than it became. Now everyone's using Teams and Zoom and so on. They don't worry so much about it. But back then, and still actually for critical services, it's still seen as, is that going to be safe? Is it going to be secure? Like you said, where's the data going to be kept? Are we keeping it in North Korea or somewhere? So having it within the jurisdiction of where the service is going to run, which
Right,
NHS means in the UK, running multiple resilient data centers that are highly secure and having all the security processes to go with that. So not just things like ISO 27001 or Cyber Essentials Plus, but going further, things like SOC 2 Type 2, where there's continual penetration testing, because no one wants to lose data. I've always said that data is the new oil, therefore data loss is the new oil spill. No one wants to be that kind of Exxon Valdez. That definitely is career threatening.
yes, yeah. No, that's a really, really good analogy. And it's quite accurate, isn't it, in terms of the growing value of data and all of the associated issues like the requirement to house it safely and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, any customer wants their data to be respectfully treated. But I think with health information, so much the more so, we can't be more sensitive than that. Obviously, I suppose maybe money is a similar sensitivity, but you don't want your health data leaking out or people finding out about it. And it's
Yes,
absolutely right that that should be the case. But
exactly.
we want to leverage that data to work with it, to form that kind of personalized service or to have insights that are going to be useful in improving how a service works. So
Sure.
that mix, really, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah, quite a complicated but important, if you will, ecosystem to navigate and to manage. Martin, we've talked a little bit about the single virtual contact center and the innovation there. How does that actually directly impact healthcare providers? Are you creating jobs? Are you eliminating jobs? Are you trying to get organizations that historically weren't in any type of partnership to collaborate more, or what are some of the big issues there?
Yeah, that was actually an initiative that came from the centre, from NHS England.
Okay.
They looked across the urgent care space, particularly 111, and saw that you had 40 plus contract areas in which the holder of that contract, the provider, could choose whatever technology they wanted. So you're going to have a widely variable degree of capability and standard of service and even
Yes,
consistency of service
yes,
from one area to another. So they had a good look at who was doing what. And they decided, I think, that Huck seemed to be doing it the right way. They're in the cloud, it's scalable, there's intelligent automation, it's secure, it's linking in with information systems, it can run in a multi-sited way. And that actually this is a great model. And the other thing they looked at was this work that Healthy London Partnership had been doing with us called the PRM program, Patient Relationship Manager. So PRM had demonstrated how a region could work together.
Oh,
So yeah, so it's a kind of initiative to be able to run England as 7 regions, to have a consistent service across that region, and to have a leveled up, as it were, to coin a sort of political phrase,
yes.
leveled up degree of service up
Yeah.
to the standard of the best.
Nice.
And so that's how what Huck had done over this period of time then became the standard nationally. And that's the program that's being rolled out everywhere. And you pointed out that some will be more supportive than others. Of course,
Sure.
if you are the IT manager in one of these providers, you've kind of built your last few years of your career on how this works, the systems you've put together, how they kind of integrate with one another. Suddenly someone's telling you, well, you kind of don't need that anymore. We'll take it from here. Inevitably, you're going to get a degree of resistance.
Yes. Yeah, naturally.
Yeah. So what has to happen is that you've got to think, okay, I want to be part of this new regional structure. I want to be able to do, for example, intelligent load sharing with my other people who are in the region, who are providers alongside me.
Sure.
And maybe to have better capabilities as well. And then the final clincher is that NHS England said, this is so valuable to us that we're going to pay for your contact center licensing now. So therefore, as a provider, you think, well, I no longer need to kind of own and run that contact center and all the phone lines and other paraphernalia that go around it.
Yeah, it's a different skill set, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So, but generally, the IT managers, CIOs, CTOs have been actually more excited than worried. And as they've come to see, okay, this gives me more control than I've got previously because it's part of an evergreen platform.
Yes.
Continually being upgraded. I'm not doing step upgrades once a year. There's new capabilities coming along all the time to do more integrations, more automation, different channels of communication. And that all just kind of lands in my lap. And I just have to think about how I want to run my service to the best of my ability. That's led to it becoming accepted.
Yeah, yeah. And very, very important and challenging in healthcare. We understand that correctly so, healthcare is a cautious, conservative, evidence-based industry. And therefore, the challenges of adopting new technologies which haven't necessarily been around and proven for a long time are increased, aren't they?
They
Hey,
really
look,
are.
Martin, this has been so incredibly interesting and helpful and informative. I wish we could go out for a pint in the pub and talk about this for another 2 hours, because I find this extremely interesting and relevant for our entire national audience of people committed to innovation in healthcare with technology. But sorry to say, we don't have much time left. Maybe I could ask you, please, just to talk a little bit about next steps for you, next steps for Content Guru. And for example, what are some of the most important factors that you think will shape the healthcare communication space in urgent care going forward?
Yeah, well, obviously, the continued rollout of the single virtual contact center, that's a given, that's part of it.
Yeah.
I think they probably more regionalization. So you've got these 7 regions.
Yeah.
Many of them are kind of, they've just met in the car park, as it were.
Yep.
So there's a lot to do there to really harmonize how the whole region works. And of course, being a region means you've got the whole soup to nuts. So you haven't just got the urgent and emergency care, you've got the handover to the hospital, for example.
Right.
Again, another great thing we did with Huck last year, which won an HSJ award, was a virtual waiting room with Adam Brooks Hospital.
Okay.
So smoothing that transfer from the kind of remote-based care that comes with a 111 type interaction to the physical arrival in a hospital. And I think the integration with the electronic patient records that hospitals use, so that the patient is expected, they've got a time to come, they're notified if that time changes, they can have a remote consultation with a triage clinician while they wait. Everything's ready for them when they arrive, no waiting around and having a fight with anyone anymore. You're going straight in. So I think that's one of the bigger things that I'm looking forward to getting stuck into next year.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, obviously, we wish you very good luck with that. And what's the famous phrase? Overnight success comes after 20 years of very hard work.
Yeah, exactly. We're very much a 25-year overnight success here.
Yeah. But honestly, Martin, I've been so extremely interested in hearing about your story and the success of Content Guru and the importance of the work that you guys are doing in healthcare, goes without saying. So we're grateful for your time. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we appreciate all the interesting background information and explanations that you've shared with us today. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Barry.
Good. So once again, that was Martin Taylor from Content Guru. You'll be able to see Content Guru at the Giant Health event next week. I invite once again all of our listeners to go to the Giant website, www.giant.health, and to learn about our event, which is next week, the 6th and 7th of December in London, England. Everybody working in healthcare is invited, and you can all come for free as the guests of our sponsors like Content Guru. So thank you to all of our listeners from around the world. This has been this week's episode of Healthy Innovators TV.